the fossil fuel divestment movement. Do we have any people involved in Divest at the University of Michigan? So, you know, as it was mentioned, I'm a board member of 350.org. 3 years ago, Bill McKibben, our founder, wrote an article for Rolling Stone called "Do the Math." And, you know, as Bill likes to point out, he didn't even get the cover. Justin Bieber was on the cover. But since this article came out, which encouraged people to just do this basic piece of math, we know that our governments have said that they are committed to keeping warming below 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels. That puts us on a carbon budget, and climate scientists have told us how much carbon we can collectively burn if we want to give ourselves a solid chance of staying within that carbon budget, of staying below 2 degrees Celsius. And by the way, I think that's a very dangerous target, and when that target was set in Copenhagen in 2009, the African delegates walked out of their respective meetings and said that 2 degrees was a death sentence for Africa, that it was much too high. The island nations chanted 1.5 to survive, because at 2 degrees, they're still going to disappear. But 2 degrees is what our government said was dangerous. And fossil fuel companies have 5 times more carbon than that in their proven reserves, already counting towards their stock price. That's why we say we must divest. That's why Oxford has divested. That's why Stanford is divesting from coal. That's why dozens of universities have divested. That's why the Rockefeller the first family of fossil fuels, as Bill said, why the heirs of the Rockefeller fortune have announced that they are divesting their foundations from fossil fuels and investing in low-carbon alternatives. So it's a little mystifying why here at the University of Michigan, your administration still won't form a committee. I think it's exciting that the group here is called Divest Invest, right? Because it isn't just about divesting, it's also about where we move that money. And I think that that is a particularly compelling call in this part of the country, so close to Detroit, which is not just a laboratory for the shock doctrine. It is also this incredibly creative, resilient laboratory for the post-carbon economy, for urban agriculture, for green co-ops. There is so much locally to invest in to support as we move our money away from fossil fuels. And at this point, I have to say that that incredible laboratory lost such a powerful voice recently in Grace Lee Boggs, an intellectual who is so dearly missed by all those who knew and loved her and whose lives she touched. And I think that it also compels us to carry that vision forward in her absence. You know, divestment is not an end in itself. We aren't going to bankrupt Exxon by, you know, getting our endowments out of it. This is part of a process. Every time we make the argument that these profits are illegitimate because they're based on a business model that is at war with life on Earth, we get one step closer to that carbon tax. We get one step closer to the policies that are going to help us pay for this transition. And we got a little bit closer to that this past month when revelations came out about the fact that Exxon has been researching climate science since the 1970s. And all this time that their CEO was saying, oh, well, the science isn't clear, his own scientists were publishing in peer-reviewed journals, feeding information to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change about the reality of climate change. And this puts the fossil fuel industry, and it isn't just Exxon that was doing this research, into a very similar legal position as the tobacco companies were. And this is why, this is another level of pressure, right? We've got the price shock. We have this rising blockadia, the movement taking on new fossil fuel infrastructure, wherever it is. We have the fossil fuel divestment movement, and now we have the prospect of prosecution. And we need to be signing all those petitions and calling for the prosecution of Exxon, because that's going to be the beginning of this. and getting more of those profits to pay for the transition. Okay. So,
campaign.
the other piece that's really exciting is that climate justice is not just a slogan. The climate justice movement is getting clearer and clearer about the policies that it will take to build the next economy that we want as we get off fossil fuels, fighting inequality, fighting institutionalized racism, healing our societies. It's not just enough that we have a green economy. We need a fair economy. It's not just about cleaning, it's about healing the wounds that date back to our country's founding. We need a transition that delivers justice to the people whose communities have borne the brunt of the danger, the toxicity, the exploitation of the existing system. That means that we need a priority principles. The first principle, no new fossil fuel infrastructure, no new sacrifice zones. But also, the sacrifice zones of today and yesterday need to be first in line to get the resources for energy democracy, to own and control their renewable energy projects so that they get the jobs, the skills, and the revenues in their communities so people can stay in their home communities. This vision is being fought for in the streets. It's saying, yeah, we need climate jobs, but we need better jobs than the current system is delivering. We don't want inmates fighting fires. We want climate jobs that pay a living wage, that are unionized, that are part of the fight for 15. And we also need to redefine what a climate job is. You know, when we think about green jobs, we usually picture a guy in a hard hat putting up solar panels, and that's part of it, but that's not all that there is. We already have green sectors of our economy, low carbon sectors of our economies that are the caregiving professionals. The people who take care of children, the elderly, our healthcare workers, our nurses. These are the existing low carbon economies that make our societies resilient, more humane in the face of disasters, and these are the very parts of our economy that are systematically under siege in the era of austerity, which is why a principle of climate justice must be that austerity is a fossilized form of thinking that is at war with life on Earth. The money we need to pay for this great transformation is out there. We just have to go after it, whether that means an end to fossil fuel subsidies, financial transaction taxes, increased royalties for fossil fuel extraction, a progressive carbon tax, and cuts to military spending. We need to invest in our decaying public infrastructure so that it can withstand increasingly frequent extreme weather events. So, you know, we know what we have to do. And, you know, as I said, sometimes I get this message that you're making our jobs harder by linking climate change to all of these other issues. And I want to leave you with this thought, which is that one of the biggest reason why we have failed to lower our emissions in these past 25 years that we've been talking about it is precisely because we have separated the environment from all of these other social justice struggles. It is intimately linked, and we are up against forces. Now, when you talk about fossil fuel companies having 5 times more carbon in their reserves than is compatible with a 2-degree temperature target, that means that if we win a safe future, they lose. They lose trillions of dollars. That's what those reserves are worth. That's why fossil fuel companies fight dirty. That's why they spread lies by funding climate change denial. That's why they buy politicians. That's why they do whatever it takes, because they're fighting for their corporate lives. When we link climate action to well-paying jobs, to badly needed infrastructure, to clean air, to clean water, to bright, not just futures, but presents, people will fight for it, because it is better than what they have right now. This is not making the problem harder. This is actually the way we win. Thank you.